New York, New York, it's a hell of a town. But where do you go when you don't want to spend a lot of money, but you want to see the city, you want to have a great time, you want to go around? But you also know that, well, you're not going to ride a bike, you're not going to jog through Central Park, and maybe some people in your group, well, accessibility, it's an issue. Let's go tour the city. Let's go for a walk. Tribeca, the triangle below Canal. Well, it's actually not a triangle. If you were here in the 1920s, you'd be hearing the sounds of a big band. And well, if you were here after that, you might be hearing some spectral sounds, but don't worry, there's someone who can help you, and well, there they are. Okay, this is our photo op. Get out your cameras, head over there, take your pictures. It's the Ghostbusters firehouse. Tribeca, where else you gonna go? Who you gonna call? Don't miss it. On with the tour. But now, you'd be in one of the trendiest neighborhoods of New York. But there's a lot more to Tribeca than that. It wasn't always that way. Tribeca is a neighborhood with a lot of history and a lot of ups and downs. Tribeca probably has more history than almost any neighborhood in New York. But most people don't realize that. Tribeca is one of those neighborhoods in New York that is really quite fascinating. Okay, do you see where I'm walking? This is your chance to really live like a New Yorker. You can spend as much as you want on food. There is everything here from bodegas up to, well, probably 3-4-star restaurants. You can find parks in the area. You don't have to blow the budget here on food, or you can really have a trendy meal. You're in one of those neighborhoods where you can do what you want to do, and you're only a few blocks from a lot of places where you can eat outside. This is all accessible. Some of these streets are old and cobblestone, but the sidewalks are pretty good in the entire area. So you can get through here however you're moving. If you're in a wheelchair, walker, whatever. Take your time. There's places to stop. There's places to rest. Enjoy the city. Robert De Niro. As you walk through the neighborhood, you probably look at it and see its restaurants, the beautiful buildings, the luxury towers that have gone up, and the old restored lofts, the great architecture, and as we come around this corner, one of its most famous residents, the Roxy. If you want to splurge, this may be the place to do it. Go into the Roxy, have a meal, at least have a drink, and look around. The Roxy is one of those classic Tribeca buildings. So go take a look. The orchestra will play during intermission. And if you look around at the Roxy Hotel, you can hear that orchestra coming out. You can still hear it playing. If you're in the Roxy Hotel, if you stay there, you can hear music most of the time. And it's a great place to be. And just look around right now. Do you see it? The 1920s? It's still around here. Tribeca's heyday. Back when the big bands were here, it hasn't left. The Roxy still holds it. Hey, if you've gone into the Roxy at some point, just close your eyes. See if you can travel back in time and try to think about what it must have been like to be in here. Back in the 1920s, that end of the 20s, the roaring 20s, and think about what it must have been like. And you can just hear the orchestra warming up in the background. Look at the glass. Look at the architecture. Sometimes a building can just speak to you. Sometimes a neighborhood can just speak to you. The cobblestone streets, as you walk down, think of the men walking down with wooden carts, pushing through the freight that had to come into New York to feed the country. Think of the Hudson River before it was filled. Think of the amount of freight that moved through the nation. Tribeca was there. All of these crates, all the freight being moved by hand, before containers, all of this coming across. This is where it was happening, right down here. All warehouses, all vertical. No machines, everything moved with human labor. And next door was Radio Row. Radio Row was a New York institution. People came to have items fixed, to buy parts, tubes for radios and television, to buy the latest gadgets. With the advent of the World Trade Center, a court battle broke out, but the suit was thrown out of court, and Radio Row was demolished. Because those freight areas were taken down because the traffic and congestion on the west side of Manhattan became too heavy. So the markets were all moved to the Bronx, to Hunts Point. And Tribeca saw its downturn at that point in time. And all of a sudden, Tribeca went into a downturn during the 1960s into the 1970s. But Tribeca holds many secrets. Secrets of a hidden past that at times is a short distance from tragedy. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of all is Tribeca is a short distance from the World Trade Center, which came down on 9/11. Pushing carts filled with fruit, loaded with freight, working for wages that were tough to live on, supporting families, immigrants that came to this country to make a living. Yet, here again, Tribeca stands, having once again, like much of New York, gone through a rebirth to become what it is today. A wonderful place to spend your time, a beautiful part of New York, absolutely incredible. Tribeca is a living part of New York and a great place to be. If you're going to visit New York, sooner or later, you are going to walk under a sidewalk bridge. Some of them will look a little bit better than this. Some are going to look exactly like this. There's always an opening to get out. There's always a way to get in. Unfortunately, this is part of New York. For those who aren't familiar with the history, southern states weren't too happy with the idea of New York being the capital of the country, so it was moved. The federal hall is going to be right down here. And assuming I got the right street. If you look around Federal Hall, another sidewalk bridge. They're required by the city wherever there's work being done on the outside of the building to protect against any falling debris. They're there for safety. Unfortunately, like I said, they're not always lined up with the curb cuts as to where the openings are. It presents a bit of a challenge. Usually if you get to the corners, you'll find they do line up with the curb cuts and you can maneuver them, but they're just part of what's in New York. Just be warned, they're workable, you can deal with them, but they tend to be all over the city. And it's New York, so it's crowded. Okay, if you've been touring New York and it's really hot or really cold, Federal Hall is a great place to go. Why? Because it's air conditioned in the summer and it's heated in the winter. And there's plenty to see inside. You're going to spend some time in there and you're going to see the exhibits and you're going to enjoy it for a few hours. And if you have young kids, they can run around. So if they're part of your multi-generational tour, that's great. If you're older and you're by yourself, you'll probably enjoy the exhibits. If you're younger, you'll probably like what's in there for a while. And if you just like history, you're going to love it. But this is what we can see for now. Okay, we're inside Federal Hall now, and they actually have a model of the original Federal Hall right in here, which is really cool, 1703 to 1788. So this is not the original building, obviously. The site has a lot of history. Okay, moreover, and there's a whole sign here. General Assembly of the Colony met here. New York State Legislature after independence between 17. I promise this is a lot more interesting when you're here. United States Congress under the Articles of Confederation. CEO's best remembered for the libel trials of Peter Zenger, the printer, in 1735, and Alexander McDougall. Hey, I'm a lawyer. The fact that there were famous court cases held here, I find kind of interesting. A lot of really cool stuff happened here, and it's really accessible. Did I mention it's heated in the winter and it's air conditioned in the summer? That's also really, really nice. A name that we see a lot historically. Pierre L'Enfant is picked to remodel City Hall for use as a national capital, and they've renamed it to Federal Hall. So here we go with Federal Hall coming in, that's 1788, and you can see the reasons why. The view of the ancient Roman architecture. They change it over, they put the eagle on it, the Great Seal of the U.S., a row of 13 stars and olive branches, swags with clusters of arrows. So in this building, the United States Constitution was put into practice. Washington, Adams, Hamilton, Jefferson, and Madison all worked here. Within the government's first 18 months, the Bill of Rights was passed, a court system was created, and executive departments were established. The building stood until 1812 when it was demolished. But we're standing in the very location where it happened. So if you happen to be visiting in New York, this is the location where all of this happened. The streets are here, and you can walk on the very ground where they walked. For any history buff who wants to walk in the footsteps of the Founding Fathers, this is the area. These are the streets. Just walk right around here. These 4 blocks, 5 blocks. A lot of Manhattan Island was made out of fill. So you go too far, well, they wouldn't have been walking there because they would have had their feet in the water. But this general area is where it happened. This is where Washington was. This is where Hamilton was. Madison, Adams, Jefferson. Lots of debates. A lot happened here. Probably as much or more than happened in Philadelphia happened in New York. And you're walking right in the very spot that it happened. You're in the money center of colonial America. It's interesting right now. So this building continued to have great impact right through 1920. I'm now in the middle of the Rotunda, and I'm not sure that this can... That sound in the background, that wasn't me. And it probably won't be here when you're here. They were polishing the floor, cleaning the floor, or whatever you want to call it. So, the Rotunda is a really cool area and really great sound coming off the ceiling. So when you're here, you should be able to play with that a bit. When I was here, I got the guy cleaning the floor. My bad luck. But it's really a cool place to be. Let me give you a look at that ceiling. Beautiful skylight. It sits up at the top of it. You can pan it. You start to see a little bit what's up there. Did you see the ceiling of that rotunda? Did you just see what it looked like? It's something out of a dream. It's like a fantasy being here. A lot of what you're going to see as you walk through here just is something from a bygone era. It's just spectacular. And it's all preserved. It's just maintained in a way that's, well, just absolutely amazing. You have to come visit this place. It really is a hidden gem in New York. Oh, and the price is right. It's free. Institution. 1842, this building was opened and it was called the Customs House. And you can see why. It's within walking distance of New York Harbor. Then the world's busiest harbor. In 1862, the facility was just too small. And here's some really interesting stuff coming up. 1790, New York lost its bid to become the capital city. The federal government moved it to Philadelphia, and then in 1800, to newly built Washington, D.C. So that ended the use of this building, this location, not this building, as the nation's capital. From 1955 to the present, I love this. After 1920, the building was used by the FBI, the Passport Office, and other government agencies. So 1955, just about the point the National Park Service is starting to expand itself outside of traditional parks, Federal Hall comes into it. And we have one of the first of, let's call them the non-park NPS sites, along with what's down in Philadelphia. But outside of Independence Hall and buildings with that significance, you see Federal Hall become part of the national park system. And the government realizes we have to preserve these historic places. And what better place to put them than the national park system? And here we have one of the best preserved buildings in the country. And what significance? It all happened here. You can see some of the more famous statements. No taxation without representation. Truth will be the test for libel. The events that occurred here shaped the nation. On this site, some of the foundations on which this nation was built, which are still debated to this day, were built into the Constitution, were resolved in the courts. And if you consider those issues important, perhaps this is the place you want to visit if you're in New York. Okay, remember I said this was the Customs House and part of the Treasury? Well, here's something you don't see everywhere. Let's take a look. Because it was a customs house, you would have had not only money, merchandise. It was interesting to see that they chose among the items in the vault, coffee, tea, denim and wool. But the coffee and tea were there considering how much part of history tea played. I wonder who made the choice. Vault. Let's see what else we can find. So normally the Washington Bible, the Bible that George Washington used at his inauguration, is stored here at Federal Hall on the day I'm visiting. It's off-site for restoration or for preservation for something. But this is the physical location where Washington was inaugurated as the first president of the United States, often credited with keeping the Union together at that point in time. If you're a fan of George Washington, the next couple of minutes are for you. It's impossible to separate George Washington from Federal Hall or Federal Hall from George Washington. His time in office was really spent here, or on this space, and a lot of what happened during his term was here. The country is not the country we know today. It was very much divided. It was very much uncertain if the nation would survive. Washington had a lot to do with its survival, with the nation becoming a nation, and a lot of what you'll hear from here to the end has to do with that. Hall, right in front of us, is what's listed as the stone, which is part of the balcony where George Washington stood to take that inaugural oath back in 1789 to become the first president of the United States. Remember, George Washington, at the end of his second term, turned down the opportunity to run for a third term for the good of the nation. He was asked to, but he turned it down. He put the country first at all times. What a wonderful place to visit. In New York, downtown Wall Street, across the street from the New York Stock Exchange. Think of the history made here. So if you're thinking about a wonderful way to spend your day, how about going and visiting the Ghostbusters, grabbing something to eat, maybe dropping by the Roxy, and then walking in the footsteps of Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, and let's not forget Hamilton, and walking back in time at Federal Hall. I'm Jack Rose from Ultimate Park Guide. If you enjoyed the video, ring the bell, subscribe, like it, makes a big difference to us, and come back and visit us again soon. And enjoy your time in New York.